there, everybody. Do you know that what you do after exercise with your dog, your post-exercise activities, your routines, what do you do for post-exercise recovery? Do you know that that can make or break whether your dog excels, succeeds, or fails in competition, on the trial field, on the training field, and in the work and jobs that our dogs do? This is an important topic that I did not pay enough attention to until I had a particular incident happen with me and my dog Knox. And post-exercise recovery, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, post them down. I'm going to share some of my experiences. I'm going to give you some background about why this is so important to be thinking about it. And you know, a lot of times we think about, well, number one, we think about when we're exercising, right? Doing our exercise routine, our training routine with our dogs. And some of you, all of you should be thinking about your warm-up activity, warming up your dog, getting the muscles ready for exercise. So I would say the most common thing people think about is what are they doing in the moment during training? And probably the next most common thing is what are they doing beforehand, warming up your dog, getting them ready. But I think an area that is really ignored, that people are not paying attention to enough, is your post-exercise recovery. What's happening when exercise is done? And you're going to see, I'm going to give you an example that if you ignore this, it can really come back and bite you. And it can potentially end up with something quite serious. You could end up with your dog having some serious long-term side effects and even end up in the emergency room or worse. So thank you for joining me. If this is your first time, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Erica Boling. I am the owner and founder of Northeast Canine Conditioning. I love helping people take their sport dogs, their working dogs, any dog, and helping them get more fit, healthy, prevent injuries, and just really help them reach maximum potential in what they're capable of doing. And I also like to help people, canine business owners, and think about how they can help educate and expand what they're doing by reaching people online. So before, I'm going to be telling you a little bit of background, give you a little bit of backstory here, and I'm going to show you my dog Knox. Let me see if I can get his picture up. So this is when we first started competing. His name is Knox. He's a Belgian Malinois. This was, oh gosh, he was probably about 2 years old around this time. And we were competing in French ring. And if you know French ring, it's a very, very physically demanding protection sport. They're running at high speeds across the field. They're flying through the air sometimes. They do a long jump. They have a palisade wall. It's like well over my head, and I'm like 5'10". They're scaling up the side of walls, jumping straight down the vertical side. Their hurdle jump, it starts at 1 meter. The lowest is 1 meter, and it goes up. And it's a very physically demanding sport. And there's a lot of dogs that can't compete at the higher levels because it's just they physically cannot do it. And so all of this, what kind of came about is what happened to me to kind of wake up my eyes and pay more attention. I mean, I know about post-exercise recovery. You know, I was a personal trainer. I ran marathons. I train long distance. I know about this, but reminders are good. Reminders are good. So this was Knox. This was before the incident happened. But we were training at the time. I was training, I believe it was after our French Ring 1. And we were training and preparing for competition is what we were doing. And I will say this, that what happened to him was, it was preventable, if I had maybe been more aware. But what happened is we were training up in around Syracuse, and we were in the Syracuse, New York area. It was in the summertime, and it was really warm out. And my dog, he's a Malinois, high energy. He's an indoor dog. I don't kennel him outside. And he does tend to have a little bit of a tendency to be sensitive to heat, more so than other dogs that I know. He's had a vet check. Everything's clear. He's healthy. He's fine. We have no medical concerns, right? He's healthy. He's good to go. And I knew it was going to be a warm week. I don't remember the temperature. I think it was around, I think the highs were supposed to get in the mid to upper 80s, maybe the low 90s. And in New Jersey, we don't, in the summer we do get some 90-degree weather, but it's not like our dogs are just acclimated, and especially if they're an indoor dog. When I train, I'm usually training in the summertime, and it's cooler than that because I'll make sure that I'm taking them out early in the morning, right? And so it was going to be a warm weekend, and I know that he can be sensitive to the heat. And so I asked the trainer, can we work him first? Do him first thing in the morning. It was probably like 9:30 in the morning before it got really hot. And he said, no problem. And so I worked him Saturday morning and Sunday morning. Early in the morning, we were the first people to train. And the rest of the day, I was parked in the shade. I have a Suburban. I had the tailgate up, all the doors open. He had water all throughout the day. And I would take him out for walks. But basically, he was just chilling. He was just chilling throughout the day, hanging out in the car and going for walks with me in the shade. And he had done his work in the morning, so he was done. And he did really well. He was in the shade. It was warm, but he was being hydrated, and he trained really well. Saturday night, we were in a hotel room, so he was cool. He was chilling. Sunday morning, same thing. We trained in the morning. He did really well. We hung out until I probably left there maybe around 3 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon, and then we drove home. It was about a 5.5-hour drive, and he was fine. We got home. He ate his dinner, and normally after a big day of training like that, he crashes. He's like totally exhausted, and he goes to sleep. And so he ate. He instantly went to sleep. And the next day, he sleeps in a crate. The next day, I let the crate out. And normally when I let the crate out, he's like a maniac. He just, runs out, and he runs down the stairs, and he's just full of energy. I opened up the crate, and he just kind of walked out. He wasn't running. He wasn't acting crazy. And I was like, yeah, I noted it, but I was, it was odd for him. But he was acting normal. He just wasn't high energy like he normally is. He came downstairs, and I gave him his breakfast, and he didn't eat his breakfast, which is not normal for him. Normally he has a good appetite. He also, I believe, Sunday night, if I remember correctly, he wasn't like drinking a lot of water. Normally when I train during the day and stuff, he'll drink a lot of water, and that night, he'll still be drinking and hydrating. And then Monday morning, he didn't drink any water, he didn't eat his breakfast. He didn't have any water. And again, I kind of noted that. I was like, well, he's not drinking water. And I know he was outside, and we did a lot over the weekend, and he didn't eat his breakfast. I was a little concerned, but not overly concerned, because sometimes they skip their breakfast. Sometimes they're not hungry, but it doesn't happen that often. But once in a blue moon, I wasn't overly concerned. I took him out to go to the bathroom out the front steps. I walked him unleashed out the front steps of my house, and he tripped on the stairs. It was like 2 steps. He tripped. And I noticed, and I was like, he's very agile. He's very cat-like. He's very athletic. He's very agile, more so than my other Malinois. And I was like, that's kind of odd. Like, he normally doesn't trip on the stairs. He went to the bathroom. I brought him in. He walked up the step. It's like 2 steps coming into the house, and he tripped again. And I was like, he just, I couldn't pinpoint it. And I always tell people, go with your gut, listen to your gut. And my gut told me he wasn't just real stable on his feet. And it's not like he was wobbling. It's not like he was limping, but he just gave me the appearance that he just wasn't strong. He just wasn't real steady on his feet. He just tripped twice, going down 2 steps and coming back. And so that really concerned me, the fact that he wasn't drinking water. And I thought, you know what, I think he's dehydrated. And he doesn't have a lot of body fat. And when he's been sick in the past, when he starts to feel ill, he can progress really quickly and go downhill quickly. And I had that happen once when he had pancreatitis. I think it was an issue with the pancreas, but I remember, it was like really quick. He went downhill. So like, I was a little bit nervous, because I was like, oh no, that happened before. And he looks okay, but he's not super strong. My gut's telling me, he's not super solid and stable on his feet. And I thought, you know what, I'm taking him to the emergency room. I took him in right into the doctor, and I told him, listen, we were training, and I think he's possibly dehydrated, and maybe we need to do some subcutaneous fluids and just, rehydrate him. That's what I thought it was. And I will say this, the veterinarian was like, you guys are crazy training in this heat. He was like, you should not be out there training. And again, we trained in the morning, but there were other people training in the afternoon. And so he did kind of fuss at us for that. And then he said he was mildly dehydrated, not severely, not like dangerously dehydrated, but he was like, it's good you brought him in. And we gave him some subcutaneous fluids. Within less than an hour, I noticed he was perking up and he was feeling better. So this was something that really, what shook me up was that he was fine in training. He was fine when I came home. He looked fine. He was drinking water Saturday and Sunday. And I started to do some research on heat exhaustion and heat stroke. And I started to see that dogs can have, you can see some of these signs and symptoms with the heat exhaustion, the effects of the heat. You can see stuff appear a day after. You can have a really tough training session in the heat. They can have heat exhaustion, and it could take them days to recover from that. And of course, heat stroke is, more severe, and they can actually die from heat stroke. And so the more that I learned about it, I didn't know, I thought since we had gone through the training, he was fine. He was drinking water. It was 2 days. He had his dinner. I thought we were clear, like my dog's fine. And I didn't realize that the kind of lingering effect, and I didn't realize that it could take so many days for a dog if you're out training in hot weather and, they're panting a lot and they're expending a lot of energy. I didn't realize the extent that this can impact a dog after exercise. And it literally took him, he was feeling really well within 24 hours, but to me, he didn't seem 100% to me until maybe a week later. And when I was reading about stuff about heat stroke, and he wasn't having heat stroke, but I would say heat exhaustion and some dehydration. But what I was reading, what I was finding out was that when you have that heat exhaustion, you have the heat distress, it can take them, quite a while to recover. And when you have the damage from, say, heat stroke, like you could have permanent damage from that. So what I did here and what I learned was to pay more attention to that post-exercise recovery. And we know that when you do that recovery process and you hydrate them, you replenish, whatever they lost and give them a good meal, your dogs are going to do better, especially if they're doing back-to-back training days, if they're doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So if you're training back-to-back, or your dog's working or competing back-to-back days, and even if you're competing in the morning and then you're competing again in the afternoon, what you do after that exercise is really, really important to prepare them and to see how soon are they going to be ready to be like 100% to go out there again. And so I wanted to just kind of share that story with you because, I'm super cautious with my dogs. I'm knowledgeable about, fitness, and I'm very knowledgeable about heat stroke and heat distress and stuff like that, because I've had incidences before where my dogs have shown, kind of not handling the heat well. I had some scary moments, and I've trained with people where I've seen a dog collapse on the field from heat. But it goes to show you, there's always more that we can learn. And so some of the things that I did was I started to change things up and pay more attention now, even more attention to what I do before, during, and after exercise. And I did find out one time he was having what I thought were signs of potentially heat stroke. And I found out later, like his blood sugar was actually dropping in the middle of hard exercise. And he hadn't eaten in quite a while. And so I really revisited what I feed him. Is he getting the nutritional needs he has? And I started paying more attention to when I feed him before, what do I do during, and what do I do after exercise. So I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to give you a disclaimer because people always want to know. They say, well, what do you feed your dog? Or do you give supplements? Or, what brand? What is it that you're giving your dog? And so I do want to say, I'm going to say a disclaimer here, is that I'm going to share with you what I do with my dog. And I would never tell somebody what food to feed, what supplement to use. If you should use a supplement, it's always check with your vet. So I'm going to share what I do and what I feed my dog, or what supplements I give. I am not saying this is what you should do. I'm just going to share my rationale behind it and what I do, what seems to work for me. But again, I'm not a veterinarian, and I'm not telling you what to do or give with your dog. So I might mention something here, and I would say, if you're wondering about it, go to your veterinarian and ask your veterinarian. And I'm real sensitive to that. Hey, Mary, thanks for joining us. I'm real sensitive to this. And Barb, thanks for joining us. I'm sensitive to this because I had a dog that had some lameness issues, and everybody was like telling me all these supplements to use. And there was this one supplement that everybody was like saying, this is an amazing supplement. Do this, do this, do this. And it was the same brand. Everybody kept saying how amazing it was. I started giving it to my dog. It was a daily supplement. And after about 10 days, he was vomiting every single day. I think I feel certain it was because of the supplement, because he was throwing up every single day, one time a day. Like, he would throw up next, and then he'd be fine. Then he'd throw up. The day I stopped giving him the supplement, he stopped vomiting. And so, and I'm nothing against, I mean, for him, it just didn't jive with his body. Like, for him, it just didn't work. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad supplement. It worked great for many, many, many people, but for my dog, it didn't work. And so, so I just want to reiterate that, you know, somebody might say, you know, do this dog food and try this supplement. And, you know, dogs are all different. We all respond differently to what goes into our body. And so, so again, I just wanted to state that. And so what do I do? So one of the things I started thinking about is like when to feed. So if I'm going to be doing really strenuous exercise with my dog, I feed my dogs normally like twice a day, and they get a little snack before they go to bed, but 2 full meals a day and a little snack. And one time I went way too long. Like, I fed him early in the morning, and we were training at 11 at night. And I don't like to feed him right before exercise. And we were training really late, and he was just petering out. He was having the side effects that looked like, you know, heat exhaustion. And that's when his blood sugar, we realized that we had gone too long, and he had no fuel in his body to get him through the real intense exercises we were doing for friend train. So now what I do is when to feed. What I do with my dogs is, if I know I'm going to be exercising, I don't want to feed him right. You know, my dogs, if I feed them within an hour or 2 of exercising, the strenuous exercise, they'll get diarrhea. And so me personally, I like to go 3 hours or more. And if I'm going to give them like a regular meal, I actually prefer to have more than 3 hours, but I like to definitely have a gap of time. This is his regular meal, but like his regular meal. So, so I like, when I know I have a big weekend coming up, a big training, a big seminar, I pay attention to when I feed my dog, because I don't want him to go too long without having any kind of fuel in his body. But I don't want to feed them too close that we start having stomach issues, and people start getting concerned with, you know, if dogs are drinking a lot when they're exercising, and you know, feeding them right before exercise. You hear people worrying about bloat and stuff. That's how I treat the feeding. And then what I also do is, when we say when to feed, is the supplements. And here's the thing, and I've read this in some of the kind of the veterinary, the vet tech, and the physical therapy textbooks that I have. When they look at the nutritional needs for dogs, and, you know, do we need to give them all these extra calories and give them, you know, all this extra fat? The typical dog, the typical pet dog, or the typical weekend warrior, let's say you just get your dog out for agility 1 day a week, and your dog's just kind of a regular pet dog, not doing a whole lot during the week. Those dogs with those routines, we really don't need to be doing, you know, a huge boost and giving them extra, you know, extra calories and extra fuel. A lot of times what they're already getting is plenty, and it's sufficient to get them through the exercise and what they're doing. And the majority of the pet dog owners, if they go out and do a little bit of exercise, their dog's just fine. You know, make sure your dog's hydrated, but they don't need to be, you know, kind of really boosting stuff for that exercise day, because the general population, the general pet dog population, and the casual sport dog people, they're just not, you know, the dogs are, a lot of them are already overweight to begin with. They're getting plenty of energy and fuel. Maybe they're not getting the right kind, but increasing the food, increasing whatever you're giving them is not necessarily needed. So when is it needed is when we think about the dogs that are really doing those high intensity activities. When they go out, like they are putting like 100, I'll say 110%. We know that's not possible. But if you have a crazy Malinois, if you have a working line, whatever the dog is, a high energy working line dog, these dogs that don't have an off switch and they've got a higher metabolism and they're just like revving engines nonstop. You take these dogs and you put them to work and you give them exercise, and these dogs are just overload, like they're just like in turbo stage. So then you take these dogs and you're working them really intensely throughout the day. They're hunting all afternoon, right? They're running miles and miles and miles. These are the dogs that we need to really be concerned about to make sure that our pre, during, and post-exercise routines are really helping the dogs get what they need. So I did want to mention that. So, if you're like, oh, we're going to go play, do some agility and we're going to, they're going to run around the ring a few times and we train for a half hour, you probably don't need to be thinking about all kinds of additional stuff for exercise just for that one day a week that you do. So your dogs and think about, are they just going through all that the energy source and kind of depleting what they have? Those are some of the things that I think about. Am I going to supplement? So I do give kind of supplements, just regular stuff with the food and stuff for the joints and things. But I do have supplements and things that I give specific to when we have really intense activity and workout where I know he's going to need an extra boost. And this could be a real hard workout. The weather's really tough. We're doing multiple days in a row. And so what I do, again, this is what I do with my dog is, when he started having issues, and this was also with kind of, we think was with his blood sugar dropping, is I started supplementing with this NutriCal. And there's different types of things you can give, but I associate it, think about marathon runners, if any of you are long distance runners. And, we just don't have enough fuel in our body to get us through all those miles. And when you risk hitting, we call hitting the wall, right? You just kind of deplete everything and you just crash. You just can't go any further. So it's not unusual for runners when we're doing long distance, we do energy gels to just kind of give us a little boost to our system as we're going. And so what I started doing with Knox was I changed the food he was using. So we just needed a better energy source. We needed my veterinarian was like, we need to up everything. More carbs, more protein, more fat. He's not getting enough of what he needs for the intense work he's doing. And then what I started doing was when I knew that I had a really hard workout and a long, maybe we were going to train 3 times throughout the day. He was going to have a rest. He was going to train. He was going to rest. What I started doing was I would take the NutriCal and I might give him just a little, it's like a gel, and give him like a squirt in his mouth. And if I wasn't going like all day long or something really long, if for a post-exercise recovery, sometimes what I would do is when we were done exercising, he would get a little bit of that NutriCal and I would just hold it up and I just squirt it into his mouth, just a little bit. And so I would determine on whether I use it or how much I use it based on the kind of exercise. If we're just doing regular day-to-day training and exercise, I don't give him NutriCal. But for me, I noticed a difference, and my trainers said that they noticed a difference when I changed his food and started using the NutriCal. We saw that he was recovering faster, and it's a combination of things. But I don't have scientific data on it. There are research studies that look at doing dietary supplements, and they do have some data that leads us to think that it is helping in the recovery process and helping them recover faster. For me, I really felt like it made a difference for Knox. And then depending on the situation, when he ate, how long had it been since he had eaten? If I fed him at 9 in the morning and I'm training at 6 p.m. and I don't want to give him dinner before eating, but he hasn't eaten for hours and hours, if we had a really intense workout, I might actually give him a little boost or a NutriCal or some other supplement before I train. And it might be an hour or so, but it's not the same consistency as like food sitting in their stomach. So, So Jessica says, love NutriCal. It makes a huge difference in keeping the weight pull dogs fueled. Yeah, like I said, it just, I don't have scientific evidence. I don't have like the documentation, but I really felt like it made a difference. And like I said, my trainer noticed because he would take forever to recover. And recovery to get back to, normal body temperature and everything, it's also a measure of fitness, right? If your dog's not fit, your dog's going to take longer to recover. Well, what happened was we had been training. He was fit. We were doing a regular training program, but his recovery was taking forever. Like I would hand leash, I walk him on a leash. Like it would take him a half hour to just kind of get that body back down to just kind of that normal state, pre-exercise mode. And I did notice when I started changed his food and gave him, the supplement on the really intense days. Again, I don't use it all the time, but on the really intense training days or competition days that are really tough on him or back to back, I really did feel like he was recovering better and faster. And then, like I said, depending on the needs, sometimes I would only give it after exercise. If he needed, if things were, unusually tough on him throughout the day and it was a long day and breaks in between exercise, I might give it in between. And then, depending on when he was eating or what the day looked like, I maybe would give it to him before exercise, maybe not. A lot would also depend on when he ate. Michael says, what do you recommend for males on IPO day? We leave at 7 a.m. to get to the field at 8:45. I don't want to feed them just before driving, but then worry they're on, yeah. What I do, if I'm worried that my dog's training on an empty stomach and they didn't get food and I don't want to give them a regular meal, that for me, Michael, that's where I might use something like the NutriCal, because I'm not giving them so much it's going to upset his stomach. And it has, it has carbs, it has protein, it has, it has sugar, it has different things in it that can help them. So it's not like a completely, empty stomach. But that is a concern, because it's like, am I going to get up, 3 hours early and we're already leaving at 5 in the morning? Well, I'm a night owl, so I should just feed them before I get up. But yeah, that's what I do is if I can't get a meal in, at an appropriate time before exercise, I might use the NutriCal just to give them a little bit of a boost. And again, depending on, for me, if it's just an average training day, I don't use it. I don't use the NutriCal. So depending on what you're doing, whether you need it or just give them protection sports, depending on the dogs, it can be really intense. But if you don't want to give them a regular meal and you can't give it well enough ahead that you feel comfortable with that time span in between, you might want to do some kind of supplement, something like this. And Michael says, since they're calm in the car, is it okay to feed before traveling as opposed to them not eating until 2 p.m.? Yeah, depending on the dog, and you're looking at a time span. And I fed my dogs in the morning and then had long car rides. Depending on the dog, that's what I've seen. But that's how I've kind of how I think about the when to feed and when to supplement. This is what has worked with Knox. So, with another dog, they may have totally different needs. I know for Knox, I know for him, his blood sugar level on just normal sitting in the veterinarian's office is normal, but it's a low normal. It's average, but it's a low average. And the vet was like, if your dog's a low normal sitting in the office and he hasn't eaten for a while and he's working really intensely, the veterinarian was like, I would not be surprised if that blood sugar is just, is getting a bit low and just dropping. And so that's also, that's something specific to my dog. So this is kind of a combination of the needs that my dog has had and what I've seen that has helped my dog. And like I said, just like my other dog, Bachi, when I was using a supplement that everybody loved, I gave it to him and he's throwing up every day. So you really have to base it on individual dogs. Now, another thing, let me see if I could pull up another, not sure if I can get it to show up, but there's another supplement that I use, and I use it a little bit differently. I don't think this, give me 1 second. I want to see if I can pull it up on the screen for you. Here we go. This is in powder form, And here we go. I think this is it. It's the Canine Super Fuel. And there's a lot of similar, there's a lot of similar ones to the Canine Super Fuel. I'm having trouble getting it to come up. Let me try one more time. I don't think I'm getting it. But it's called, if you guys Google it, it's called Canine Super Fuel. And usually they do the letter K and the number 9. Canine Super Fuel. And this is, some people do it as like a supplement for regular meals. It's a powder. Sometimes what I'll do is this might be where I do post-exercise recovery, and let's say he's doing 2 days back to back. I don't give it to my dogs every day. But if, let's say I'm doing a 3-day seminar and he's working really, really hard 3 days in a row, what I might do that night when I go home and he has his dinner is I put the Canine Super Fuel with his dinner. And normally with that, it's a powder. I'll put a little bit of water and mix it up. There are times where I thought that he needed a little bit of boost, and I didn't want to feed him normal food. He hadn't eaten in quite a while. I have sometimes used that as kind of like when I would use a NutriCal. There was one time I used it. It was about an hour before exercise, and I used the Canine Super Fuel. And I didn't put it with dog food or anything, but I just kind of mixed it up with some water and made it kind of liquidy. And he drank it up before we exercised. But usually when I use that, usually when I'm training and in between or on the field, in the moment, I'll carry the NutriCal. And then normally when I do the Canine Super Fuel, usually I do that with the meal, depending on what we're doing, how strenuous of a training day we're having or a weekend. I might do it with his breakfast. I might do it with his dinner. And normally I would definitely do it as kind of post-exercise recovery the night of whenever he had a really hard workout. He had a real strenuous day, really tough day. I would use it for my post-exercise recovery and include it in the evening when he has his dinner and put that in there. So Jerry Connie Walker says most dogs in decent condition should be able to train no problem on an empty stomach. You said you get a kick out of humans in the gym sucking on the sugar drink to barely break a sweat. Yeah. And that's why, and that's what I started with, with a lot of the dogs and a lot of the stuff that we do, the average person and the average dog, they're fine on whatever you're doing with your regular feeding and when you feed them. And like I said, with my dog, he was more sensitive. And we did know that there was the issue with the blood sugar dropping. I do have my other dog, just when we talk about dogs going on an empty stomach, I do have a dog when he gets some acid in his stomach, and when he goes a long time without eating, he will vomit the bile. And so again, it's different for different dogs. And I get that with Bachi, but Knox is perfectly fine. He can go hours and hours and hours and not eat, and he doesn't get any kind of an upset stomach. But yeah, and I want to reiterate that because, and thanks for bringing that up, Jerry, because I see a lot of people and their dogs, they're athletes. Okay. But like I said, they're like the weekend warriors. They're like the casual, I'm going to, like humans, I'm going to go dabble in a sport on a Saturday and have fun. There's a difference between somebody who's going to go out and play sports for fun on the weekend versus an elite athlete, like a high level athlete, and the intensity that high level athlete is working and competing in. Like they have totally different needs than that casual hobby person who's going to go out and just casually go play a game of basketball with their buddies on the basketball court at the YMCA on a Saturday, and they only do it one day a week or twice a month. So I do see people, there's stuff where they read about, supplements, nutritional needs, and, pre, during, and post exercise and all these things to boost the dog. And, I think there's a lot of people that are, adding the extra fuel and adding the extra calories and adding the extra boost to what the dog's doing when, the dog's perfectly fine on just the regular diet that they're working on. But definitely, like I've seen the people with it's kind of like extreme sports, right? You go to extreme sports, it's kind of those extreme activities, extreme jobs, the extreme activities and actions and sports that the dogs do. And it's also the kinds of dogs, because my Doberman can run around all day long and she just doesn't have the drive and the energy. She's just not going to expend energy like my Malinois do, because she just doesn't have the level of drive. And so it does vary, but be careful, because we've got a huge issue of obesity with our pets, and the typical kind of casual sport competitor, and even some of the jobs that I see, the working dogs, for example, some of the police dogs, right? When you think about it, how many hours is that police dog sitting in a car driving around? Like, they might spend 12 hours hanging it out in the car. And how often, how much time does that police dog spend actually, chasing a suspect and just doing crazy things with their body while they're chasing the suspect? And so I had a police officer one time ask me about the supplements, but the dog had, basically the dog's sitting in the car all day long. And my biggest concern was more not so much, oh, you need a supplement for energy. My concern might have been, well, are they only feeding the dog one time a day, a German Shepherd one time a day, and they're feeding a whole bunch of food all at once? That was more my concern for some of the people I talked with the police dogs, than say, oh, do you need to be carrying Nutrical around and have all these extra, supplements to boost your dog because he just, bit a guy one time. So that's things to consider. So Barb says, my female can't have an empty stomach or she will bile too. Yeah, Bocce's really bad about that. Knox, I've never had him do it. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen Knox do it, but Bocce definitely. He'll vomit the bile. So to supplement or not, if you've got a really good, if your dog's on a good nutritional program, your dog's getting what your dog needs, you kind of, you do kind of an average, your activity level for a sport dog or working dog or an active family pet, they probably don't need any kind of special supplementing. And another thing is, when I was seeing issues with Knox, part of the reason was, we needed to change his food, what his, base food was. And so I did see a veterinarian and I did all the blood work. I made sure everything was okay to make sure there were no health issues. So if you find that your dog is having issues, just be careful not to jump to the conclusion that, oh, I need to get Nutrical and I need to get supplements for my dog. If your dog is not handling exercise well, your dog's not recovering, your dog's taking forever to recover, if things just don't seem right and you feel like your dog should be handling exercise better, I would say go to the veterinarian first, do a full blood work, and just make sure to rule out there aren't other things going on. And that's what I did with Knox before I started, changing food or adding supplements. Was I went to the veterinarian and we talked about what he does. We talked about his nutritional needs, and I made changes. And I didn't just add supplements. I changed what I feed him, and I saw a difference. I did see a difference, but it's very individual. So what about water? This is another common question that comes up. Is I used to withhold water right after exercise, because I would always hear people talking about the possibility of your dog bloating, right? And everyone's like, don't let your dog drink a lot of water right after exercise because the concern for bloat. And if the dog's gulping the water and kind of almost inhaling the water. So I control the drinking of the water when my dog's exercising. I do control it, but I do let him drink water throughout. It could be during, it could be after, it could be immediately after. And we do know when your dog is drinking cold water, like that cold, it does help to cool the dog off. I mean, the core body temperature. And this is what I dealt with. Was I've had a dog that really scared me, and I thought we might be on the verge of heat stroke. And I have breeds of dogs that can be susceptible for drive and for various reasons that they could be more sensitive to the heat. So for me, it's like, okay, do I risk letting my dog drink more than maybe people are comfortable with and risk bloat or, having an issue there? Or do I risk the possibility of heat stroke? And so with my personal dogs and with my history with my dogs, for me, I know for my dogs, I mean, any of them can bloat, and they can bloat unexpectedly. We don't know necessarily exactly what's always triggering when this happens. But when I think about my dogs, what are they more susceptible to? And for me, I think for my dogs, they're more susceptible to heat stroke when I'm training like we do. And so what I do is I actually, and after I read some studies and stuff about hydration, I decided for my own dogs, I did start to let them drink more after exercise. I don't let them just gulp and gulp and gulp and just drink a whole bunch at once. But I do let them right after exercise get a good drink of water, and I'll walk them a little bit and let them drink some more, walk them some more and let them drink some more. And I do give them more water than what I used to when I was really concerned about the bloating, and I didn't have the heat episodes with them. And so for me personally, sometimes we take breaks on the training field when we're training, and if it's a hot day, we'll carry a bucket of water or take them off the field and let them have a drink and come back. In French ring, you can, during competition at all levels in French ring, you can ask the judge for a break so that you can go and give your dog water. It's perfectly acceptable. And on a hot day, like, people do that. So even in competition in French ring, because a French ring 3 routine, your dog can literally be out there performing for 45 minutes straight, going from exercise to exercise, 45 minutes. And so in competition, we can stop in the middle and go give our dog water. And in training, I'll do that. And then I will let him have water right after training. I won't let him gulp and gulp and gulp, but I let him have water right after. I walk him, I cool him down, and I let him continually go back for a little more water, a little more water, a little more water. And then as you heard from my story, make sure when you go home, make sure they keep hydrating. Make sure they keep hydrating, over the next 24, 48 hours, and keep an eye on them. And that's another thing is, you have a tough weekend, you're out in the heat, your dog's working really hard, you had a great weekend. If you knew that, it was really hard and tough on your dog, your dog was panting a lot, keep an eye on your dog. Watch your dog closely over the next couple days, because like I said, some of the signs of the heat distress and heat exhaustion, that can hit them. They can need days to recover from that. So watch them closely. Water and coconut oil. Michael's asking about water and coconut oil. I don't know. I've used coconut oil. One thing I noticed with one of my dogs, when I was giving him, I would just kind of give him a scoop of coconut oil with his food. I noticed his fur and stuff got a lot softer. There's research to show, though, I could be wrong, but if I can remember it correctly, and there's some studies where they looked at detection dogs, and they looked at giving different things, like different types of oils and supplements, and one of the things was coconut. And if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure it was saying that they saw a negative impact on the dogs, on the olfaction, on the actual ability for the dog in the detection and the smelling, that they noticed a difference with the coconut oil, and it was coconut based. I'm not sure in how they were giving it, but they did notice a difference with coconut versus the other types of things that they were giving them. So I'm not going to say, I don't have the studies in front of me, but I do know that there is research out there that talks about where they were looking at detection dogs, and they were looking at accuracy in the detection work, and they were giving them different things, feeding them different things, and looking at how it changed. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, coconut oil had a negative effect on them. So Terry says, I also control the water intake just before and just after the event. He gets a small amount, 1 to 2 ounces after exercise, and continue to cool him down. Yeah. Deb says, my girl's water intake is almost nil when we were at the event. Always worried she isn't going to stay hydrated. Any ideas to encourage more water intake? Debbie, is it because she doesn't want to drink the water? That's the thing is, some people have dogs, like they have trouble getting them to drink water. So so Debbie, is the issue, you said the girls' intake is almost nil. Is that because like your dog doesn't want to drink, like has opportunities but isn't drinking? Because I know sometimes that's an issue. I know sometimes people, I know people that'll do things with Pedialyte, or they'll have things to add a little bit of flavor to try to get the dogs to drink. But I know, yeah, Stephanie said corn oil and it improved it. Theory was diluted. Corn oil meant more fat, less protein. Yeah, it was, Stephanie, was that the one that you read about the corn oil improving? Did you read an article? I'm curious if that same article talked about the coconut oil. I know there was a specific one about coconut oil because I was giving my dogs coconut oil and I was kind of like, I wasn't sure. I was going to give it a try, but I wasn't sure how effective it was. So I know when I read the article and I read about coconut oil, I really paid attention. If I can find the article, you guys, I'll post it. But yeah, so they might've been comparing the corn oil with the coconut oil. So Michael, if you do IPO, your dog, your dog is doing tracking and your dog's using its nose. So that's just one thing to consider. Terry said, add a small amount of broth to the water, even cream, just a drop. Yeah, that's what I see some people do is they'll put something in the water to try to, make it so that the dogs, finds it more appealing. But yeah, that was Terry's suggestion. Jessica said, Debbie, there's an easy recipe for a canine Gatorade you can make with water from boiled meat. Commercial electrolytes often add flavor to, helps out the club dogs. Yeah, so one of the things you have to be careful too is, dogs' needs are different from humans. And a lot of times, taking the human Gatorade and some of the human stuff, like a lot of them, we have tons of sugar and just stuff that's really isn't that good for us. And so if you're going to be doing something specific or you're adding supplements, I would recommend doing something that's made for dogs rather than just saying, I'm going to give my dog human Gatorade. All right. So thank you, Jessica, for that feedback. Oh, awesome. Stephanie put a link in there, you guys, in the comment section. So yeah. So Deb, I think Deb says you offer the water, but she's not drinking it. So yeah, you're gonna have to, try some different things. And here's another thing I read in a study was make sure your dog is really hydrated before exercise. Because if you come to the training field and your dog is just a little bit dehydrated, it greatly increases the chance of heat stroke. So if a dog is a little bit dehydrated, they cannot regulate their body temperature as well as if they're fully hydrated. So, if you think your dog is dehydrated or a little bit dehydrated, the recommendation is like you don't do that activity. Like if you have a race coming up or if there's any potential that your dog could have sensitivity to the heat exhaustion, heat stroke, just know that just a little bit, being dehydrated just a little bit can really have a negative impact on your dog's ability to be able to regulate that that core temperature for the body. So I thank you. Stephanie said the study is from one comparing different types of fat. So yeah, there are studies out there. So I'm not going to say one way or the other, but these are great questions to be asking and to check. And like I said, always, if you have a concern and you have a question, check with your veterinarian. If you know people who specialize in nutrition. My area of expertise is more fitness and not necessarily, I don't claim to be a nutritionalist. So like I said, I'm not going to recommend or tell you what to use. I'll say, this is what I do. And these are questions you might want to ask your veterinarian or things you might want to consider and ask. So thanks for putting that there, Stephanie. So I think I covered everything to supplement or not to supplement. What about water? I do want to point out, I started up a new, relatively new Facebook group. It's called Get Fit and Active with Your Dog. And it's for people who just want to get more motivation and accountability to get out and not just do things with your dog, but you also getting more active and more fit. And I just want to encourage you guys, if you want to come over and join the group, We post our weekly goals for the week on activities we want to do for ourselves and our dogs, you know, sometimes together, sometimes separate. We check in middle of the week. This month, we're going to be doing every week that you submit, your name goes into a drawing. So the more that you participate, you have a better chance of winning a surprise at the end of the month. I haven't announced it yet, but it's going to be related to canine health and fitness, the prize. So if this is something that you're interested in and you want to be around like-minded people, there's people in that group that are super active with their dogs, people that aren't real active, but they want to be motivated with everybody else in there to get more active. We have people that just, you know, do stuff for fun with their dogs. We have competitors in there. And so I'd encourage you guys to go and request to join, and I'll get you in there and join in and share your weekly goals. And I found for me, it's really helped to get me more motivated. I've done things I've been putting off for a long time. And now that I put it on there and say, here's my goal for the week, this is what I'm going to do, I've been more committed to actually doing it. Let me see if I was going to try to pull it up on the screen. But that is a Facebook group. Here we go. I think I can. There we go. But yeah, it's the Get Fit and Active with Your Dog. When you ask to join, I believe there's a question if you wanted to get email updates and notified when I have videos and free stuff and webinars available. So if you put your email address in there, I'll also send you a link so you could download the Canine Fitness Guide that I have, and you'll have access to other types of fitness related topics and stuff to support you. So awesome job, you guys. Any other questions? I went over. I thought this was going to be like a short topic, and I just come in and chat and leave. But you guys had some really great questions. I think if I missed a question, I will go back and answer them. If you thought this was helpful, if anything was helpful or informative, please feel free to share the replay. Pass it along, repost it, email it. If you thought it was helpful, then I'm sure somebody else will find some of this information helpful. And just a reminder that every Friday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on my Northeast Canine Conditioning Facebook page is when I go live. I do broadcast in other areas, but I'd love to have you guys join us live, engage, ask questions. That would be awesome. And I am also heading to, I'm going to be having an article. I'm working on an article on post-exercise recovery for Working Dog Magazine. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in reading my article. It's Working Dog Magazine, and we got the Working Dog Conference coming up. I'm going to be there. So if anybody's going to be out there, please come out and say hello. Mary, you asked, can they do that in Mondio trials? I think you're asking about the water breaks. I'm not sure. I've trained with Mondio people, but I don't compete in Mondio, so I don't know the rules for that. But ask about it. In French training, we most definitely can take a break and give them water. Awesome. Any other questions? I'm scrolling through. Okay, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you're not a member of the group, the Get Fit and Active with Your Dog, the Facebook group, come on over and join us and share your weekly goals, your fitness goals for you and your dog. And we have accountability. We check in the middle of the week. And at the end of the week, we report on how we did and we set goals for the next week coming up. Thank you again. And I will see you guys soon, hopefully next Friday. Bye-bye.